Hello, everyone. My name is Ala Ashumare, and I'm coming live from my office. And thank you for joining us. You are joining us for the Pride New Haven panel. How does the queer community reach racial equity? Um, Today, we have some really amazing lived experts who are going to be speaking to this, for this, and about this. In our communities around the globe in America, we see, due to the current uprisings, a shift. We see folks really seeking education. We see a lot of folks really gaining new insight and changing their conditioned tendencies. And so, if you've been following the Pride Center these last couple of years, you'd know that the work that we're doing around these conversations, these panels, creating spaces to really be in community around racial equality and equity and what does it take to get there. And so today we have some really amazing young folks who are going to, like I said, speak to it, for it, and about it. And hopefully we can all leave this space today with a better understanding of how we can step in, maybe in some ways we should step out, and what does support for the generation that comes after us look like. And so I'm going to bring one of our first experts of this lived experience, and we're going to bring Jamila to the screen.
Hello, hello.
If you wouldn't mind, would you take a couple of minutes to just introduce yourself?
Okay, so I'm Jamila. My pronouns are she and her. I am a fellow at CityWide Youth Coalition, and I'm a student. So,
Thank you for that.
no
We're going
problem.
to ask our next lived expert to join us. Let's bring in Mia.
Hey, what's poppin'? My name's Mia. I use she and they series pronouns, and I'm currently a sophomore at Tufts University, but I am a former, well, technically still a member of Citywide Youth Coalition and of SCJ.
And last, but definitely not least, I'd like to bring in one of our last lived expert, Melody.
Hi, my name is Melody. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm a college freshman. And I'm also a fellow at the Citywide Youth Coalition.
Awesome. And again, taking my own advice, I'll follow the lead of my young folks because I forgot to share my pronouns, which are she and her as well. Um, So I want to get really into it because there's never enough time for these kind of conversations, right? Um, I was thinking when I was doing prep work for this panel, like, what is bringing folks here today? When I think about what does the queer community need to really reach, attain, and hold on to racial equity, what does that mean? And so I started thinking about W.E.B. Du Bois quote, something that he described as, um, am I muffled? Can you hear me better now? Can y'all hear me? Well, maybe it's your headphones. And folks can mute
That might
themselves,
be it.
and it might be your headphones a little bit. Everyone mute themselves except for me. Sorry, y'all. You know, COVID has shifted, but it makes things even better, you know? And we have some amazing folks joining us from Facebook. We have Juan Carlos, JC, Jeremy is joining us. And so again, thinking of how is the queer community gonna attain racial equity? And I was thinking of something W.E.B. Du Bois described as the ever unasked question between he and the other world. And that question being, how does it feel to be a problem? And then I thought of the unasked questions, or maybe like some of us have asked these questions or been asked these questions as queer folks, and it's like, how am I the problem? Why am I the problem? And then violently so, having sometimes heard, why are you the problem? And then again, that big question that we're gathered here for how does the queer community reach racial equity? And it's a weighty question, it's a big question, but it's a question that we need to experience and have discourse around many times. And so I'm leaving it open to whoever wants to answer this big question first. How does it feel to be the problem for society, for this world, being out and proud and Black and queer? How does it feel to be the problem?
Okay, I can go. Okay. So I think if we're saying that we're a problem, right? So I think being the problem, it's just kind of like annoying, right? Like it's annoying being seen as a problem, right? Because we're not doing anything wrong. We're living, we're just trying to be out here and be free. And for us to be deemed as a problem for not only the Black community, but for the queer community too, because of being Black and things like that, and just microaggressions within our communities. So I think that for me, it's just like really annoying, and it's hard because like talking with my other queer friends and with other queer people, it's just, why do we always have to have these conversations around why we're the problem? How do we fix ourselves? How do we not take up so much space? How do we make others feel comfortable? But no one's ever like worried about our comfortability, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Melody?
I was gonna say it feels kind of dehumanizing at some times because it feels like, people don't see you for you. They see your oppression first in either community, either because you're Black in the queer community or because you're queer in the Black community. It's like there's never any intersectionality between the two. And it's like you feel that you're, like I said, you're dehumanized because of it. You don't feel like you can be a full person in either community, even though there's supposed to be acceptance on both sides. And that can be really hard, especially being young during this time, when Black protesters were alienating queer people and silencing them and not acknowledging them. And then when queer people would also say, we want June back for our month, it was also like, there was no winning. So, that's how I feel personally.
Yeah. My first rebuttal to that question when I asked myself was, well, who am I a problem for? Right? Like, why am I a problem for them? I know that my lived experience, actually, the closer I get to, I like naming it for myself, the closer I get to liberation. But at the same time, the closer I get to liberation in the outside world, the closer and more points of oppression we're exposed to. And so it's so important to highlight that most freedom fighters begin their work at the ages that you folks are, right? And sometimes they started younger, or sometimes, like myself, we started older. But Mia, I'm gonna pick on you for this next question because you didn't answer the first one, which is fine. And so a phrase that I found very early in this work of trying to figure out what does Black feminism look like and what is that, and throwing away my then current definitions of what feminism was, and found a phrase by Bell Hooks: the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And she uses this framework and this phrase to describe interlocking political systems. And I believe, Melody, you just said the answer, part of that answer is intersectionality. And so, Mia, knowing you personally, and thinking about the work and a lot of the things that I've learned from you around queer identities, I noticed that you never ever were like, oh, this is when you were teaching me about asexuality, you were never like, oh, this is the Black asexuals lifestyle. And it was just like, this is what asexuality is and these things. And I noticed for you, you embody your Blackness and your queer. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm queer. Oh, I'm Black. It's like, I'm a Black queer person. And sometimes you may say I'm a queer Black person. How did you get to the point of that liberation? How did you get to the ability to, when you talk about queerness and when you talk about it, you hold automatically, it seems very natural, the intersections of your Black identity with your queer identity. How did you get to be able to do that with such ease?
I think for me, because I think there's a lot of factors into it, like how I grew up, my cultures, how I was socialized growing up, where I went to high school, how I got into organizing. I think that all plays a role in how I've come to understand my sexuality. I guess, like, for me, I don't see it as a sort of like, I'm going to come out to you and tell you this great big secret. I recognize that that's not the case for all queer folk. So I want to make sure that folks understand that, like, coming out is like a thing for a lot of people. It's not for me. And it never has been for me, right? Because I don't see that as something, I don't see any part of myself as something I have to hide. And for me, it's always been a matter of, like, I've always seen queerness as normal. Like, okay, you're not cishet, cool. What's next? That type of thing. And for me, it's been very easy to just coexist as both a black queer person, right? Along with a bunch of other identities, right? And for me, I've just reached a state of apathy because a lot of the, at least in my experience, right, a lot of the dialogue around, how do we, like, build a bridge between the Black and queer, like, communities and all that kind of stuff, like, there's a level of pandering to the white gaze, no pun intended, that I notice a lot that I can't stand, because it's like there's still a level of, you could argue it's like white supremacy showing up even when you're trying to decenter whiteness. And I don't care for the white gaze, like, you know what I mean? Like, for me, it's, I don't live for white folks. I don't live for white supremacy. I don't live for approval of really anybody, never mind, like, white cis het folks, right? So and for some people, it's hard for them to understand their identity unless white cis het folks are a part of the conversation. And that's their tea, right? That's them. I'm not going to knock them. That's not my reality, right? And it's been easy for me because I've been around Blackness. So it's not that I decenter whiteness. I never centered whiteness. Or at least I make a big effort not to, especially in my day-to-day life. So I guess all of that is to say that I'm not ashamed of my sexuality. I'm not ashamed of my identity and my personhood, because I've figured out that I am adequate as I am a long time ago. And that's not like to brag or anything. It's a matter of, like, it's been a very hard road to get to the point I am at now of, I can show up however I want to, and I'm adequate, and you're going to have to take me. And if you don't, I'm not quite sure what to tell you, because I'm not going to shift myself to pander to you. Like, I don't like pandering, respectability, politics, like all that good stuff. I don't subscribe to that, and I never have subscribed to that. And I make a conscious effort I will make a conscious effort not to do it in the future, and I make a conscious effort not to do so now. So I guess that's liberation for me. And I'm also just, I don't care about hiding it. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I am Black and I am asexual and I'm femme and I'm first gen. Like, I'm a bunch of these things. And I'm proud of that. I stand 10 toes down in that. You know what I mean?
Yes, I love when you say stuff like 10 toes down because that's me coming out, you know.
Oh
My
my
children.
God. Please.
And so I want to ask almost the same question to both Melody and Jamila. What do you use? What tools do you use? Like, what is it? And I think for the folks who are Black, right, and are queer, and age not mattering, because as y'all know, as we all know, folks can be 45 years old and super like, you'd be like, what? And then some folks are like 12 and really getting it. So like age doesn't matter in this instance, but what do you use to disrupt anti-blackness in our queer community? Even meaning for ourselves internally and also out loud. What do you do? What do you use? What would you read? Something.
I think for me personally, one of the best things that, like, the best tools you can use is self love within yourself and accepting who you are as a whole person. Because I realize, like, when looking into like feminism, the whole concept isn't really just to be who you are as a woman and to accept that. It's to be as close to a man as you can be and to achieve that level of power instead of finding your own power within yourself. Because you look at people like Susan B. Anthony, who a lot of people in the feminist movement call a hero, yet she dehumanized Black people. She didn't get my rights because I didn't get to vote until 1965, but we're not talking about that right now. And it's like she got rights, but for only a small group of people by using aggression, by using strength that attributes to men, but would also put down everyone else. But then she's claimed a hero, and that's supposed to be the cornerstone of feminism. And what I learned, especially by being Black and then being a woman, is that I can't exist in and of myself and be my true self unless I accept who I really am and not adhere to what's going on in society and what people expect me to be. So I feel like if I don't do that, then I'm not going to achieve who I really am as a feminist in my own right, in that sense, if that makes any sense.
It makes all the sense, girl. I'm about to go get the bell off my altar so I can start ringing it when y'all just bringing in the facts because it's just a lot. Jamila?
So for me, it would just have to be like holding myself and like family members and just like people around me accountable. We talk about accountability a lot at CityWide, and I'm bringing it with me like in my life outside of CityWide. And like just being Black, there's a lot of like homophobia and there's just a lot of transphobia, all of that, just queer phobia in general in the Black community. And I know in my family, it's in there. And I try my best to hold people accountable. You're not stating facts right now. You need to maybe pipe down and read a book and learn before you open your mouth and start speaking about things you have no clue about. So I think that, yeah, accountability, just small instances, even in school, there's like straight hyper mask boys, right, at my school, and they're just like trying to batter trans people. And I'm like, no, it's not going to work around me. You're just going to have to deal with me coming out your throat every time you say something wrong. So I think that would be my piece.
Because just add real quick my 2 cents too. I know you weren't trying to ask me, but like, can I just?
Yes, please.
If talking about like dismantling anti-blackness and all that good stuff, you need to start showing up, right? Okay. Like we can do that basic stuff of like support Black women, believe Black women, stand with Black women. And if you really think that, why is the same Black femmes showing up to the same protests every week? The same ones who are getting shot and murdered and nothing's happening to them. The same, like all this kind of stuff. Like the fact that, and this is no shade to anybody, it's the fact that like we're talking about queer, like bridging the gap with like queerness and Blackness, and we're all Black femmes, which is all fine and dandy, but it's like, where's everybody else at? Like, why is it, and that's not like an attack on us, it's an attack on everybody else, because everybody else is allowing queer Black femmes to be on the front lines for this work when everyone knows we work the hardest. That in itself is problematic. And that in itself is a big part of why I have a problem with feminism, because feminism, one, implies white feminism. Two, implies that what happens is white women and non-black women just shove black femmes to the front and say, you got this, you can handle this, you're gonna save everybody. And then who saves black women, black femmes, black queer femmes? Who protects us? Where our protectors at? Like, we're out here doing this work for other people, for other queer people, right? And they thank us by culturally appropriating. They thank us by using AAVE and not giving us credit. They thank us by taking our culture and trying to be like us and not giving us credit. So what you like, if you really want to have a conversation about dismantling anti-blackness, it's take the Audre Lorde books, take the Toni Morrison books, all those people, read them, read us, right? Analyze us, do the work you need to, and start coming to whatever event. Start holding your people accountable. Say, hey, I'm gonna take this off your, like, you should be lightening the load for us as Black queer femmes. You should be making life easier for us, because once you, like, we're not free until we're all free. I'm gonna modify that statement. We're not free until Black queer femmes are free. Okay? So when you free Black queer femmes, you will free everybody else. But you have to actually, even deeper than listen to us, you have to follow our example. You have to pass the mic to us. You have to give us the funds. You have to sort of, you need to do what, you need to follow our example. You know what I mean? You need to shut up and do what we say, because we hold the tools to liberation. And that sounds, and I know like that might sound cocky and arrogant, all that kind of stuff, but I've been too Black, and I've been too femme, and I've been too poor, and I've been too queer to not feel justified in saying everything that I'm saying. And it's really not to sound harsh, right? But it's just the fact that, like, it should not just be the same Black queer femmes at these events, hosting these panels, fighting with like funders for adequate funding, doing whatever, like doing like Black Lives Matter work, like, but nobody showing up for us. Like, there's a disconnect there, and it's not on us to educate everybody else. It has never been. And the fact that we're still doing this education shows immense kindness on our part, because we don't need to be doing this kind of work, and especially not for free. That's just my 2 cents, though.
Can I add to that? Just saying that the problem, like another really big problem with feminism, is that it's built on a broken foundation. You know, when it comes to like having a sacrificial lamb, there's always going to be one, and it's always going to be, until something changes, Black femmes. And the problem with that, other than like the obvious, is that the system hasn't changed, and no one works to change that system. So like people, like when people see Obama is voted in as president, they're like, okay, the system is fixed, and then we get Trump, and 4 years later. It's kind of like things like that. People don't really try to change what's already broken. They have kind of these symbolic victories and then think the system is fixed. Like, again, like going back to like Susan B. Anthony, when we get the right to vote, the system is fixed. Then was Stonewall. There was more rights that came out of Stonewall. Then bam, the system is fixed, and something else will happen. It's like there always has to be like that symbolic win, and then boom, feminism is fixed, and we're all equal now, which isn't true, but that's what people believe. And then the system, it starts all over again. And then again, there will be Black femmes who are put to the front, as Mia said, and then they're going to have to, you know, their lives are going to be on the line, and then white women are going to step back and then take all the credit. So yeah, that's my take on feminism, and like adding to Mia's point.
Yeah, thank you for that, because so make sure y'all all tune into the Black Queer Feminism panel that's happening later on this month. Queer Black Feminism panel is happening later on this month. That's part 2. And I say that not just only to plug that, but to note the importance of the many multi-layers that it takes to answer this very big question of how does the queer community reach racial equity. And so many things were coming out of what y'all folks were saying, and I'm a note taker, so I have my notes. And so one of the things that when you folks are talking about, what I hear, without anyone saying, for me, what I heard with what you folks are talking about was internalized anti-queerness in our community. Audre Lorde has a quote that says, "There's a little piece of the oppressor inside each one of us." And I just shared that with the A-Bar workshop that I did earlier today for Social Justice Day. And many queer folks hear the term anti-queerness, right? And are like, no, what are you talking about? I'm gay, I'm out, how am I anti-queer? And then I think about the same way for Black folks who when they hear anti-blackness, they're like, how are you going to tell me I'm anti-black? I'm Black. I'm dark-skinned Black. Like, you just light-skinned Black. How are you going to tell me I'm anti-Black and what you're saying is anti-Black? And then I think about, I believe, Melody, you were saying, like, families and homes and the folks in our Black communities who are saying, actually, I think both of you said that, actually, Jamila and Melody said how our Black communities are super anti-queer. And so when I think about in our own communities of Blackness, right, when you are saying anti-queer stuff around to a Black or about a Black person, you're essentially being anti-queer and anti-Black. And when a queer person that's non-Black meaning brown, white, any Latinx, anything other than Black, right? And Black. But when you're a queer person and you're saying things about a Black cishet man, that may be pretty annoying. We're going to leave the violent extremes out, but may be pretty annoying. I think, it's imperative to mention and say, well, that you're practicing some anti-Black rhetoric. You're sharing anti-Black rhetoric. So the intersectionality that y'all folks are speaking of is something that we all have to hold at one time. And I think about the number one purveyor of, like, how do we get here? How is the queer community super anti-Black in the way it is? And then I think about historical context and thinking, oh, well, it's a community. All communities are anti-Black. All communities are anti-queer because historically our communities were created out of fear. Anti-anything is created out of fear of that person. And so the media plays a very large role in keeping anti-queer and anti-Black sentiment fresh in the minds of people's heads. And I started to watch a movie, and I was halfway through it, Ted 2, with the teddy bear, and he's the guy, and I actually got really upset and bothered because there was a scene where Mark Wahlberg was at a sperm bank, and there's all these hijinks happened, and he got sperm all over him. And the nurse at the staff said, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's just someone who that's just the sperm of a man with sickle cell anemia." And we all know sickle cell anemia affects primarily mostly Black folks, right? And then the teddy bear, Ted, says, "You hear that? You're covered in rejected Black man semen. You look like a Kardashian." And I thought, wow, an animated bear is more easily attain humanity than a Black man. And I thought about how media, although no, that was not anti-queer, I think about how that affected me. And so as young folks, and the way that we have the internet and all these things, even pre-COVID, how do you cultivate a media space and a space on the internet that's safe for you? And if you haven't, what did you do when you realized that your space wasn't safe? When we call somebody?
So I can go. Okay. I think that I just try to like make sure I'm following the right people. And obviously sometimes like the shade room, they'll end up like on my feed or whatever sometimes. And I just try to ignore that because everyone knows the shade room is very toxic and their comments are very toxic and just very like they hate dark skinned people and they hate queer people. And there's just a lot of all of that going on. So I think I just try to like follow as many like open, honest, queer people, Black people, people of color, whatever. And I try to keep that on my feed. And if I see something, I'll comment. And I'm never afraid to like comment anything like, please check your facts because this is wrong. So I try to always do stuff like that and just keep it how I want it to be very safe and very uplifting. And if people are always like, you guys are always attacking for educating. So sometimes I educate, but not all the time because I don't owe anyone anything. They owe it to themselves to want to go out and to learn, especially when you're posting stuff on the internet, because like everyone says, it's a part of your life forever. They can find the stuff that you post from years ago and use it against you. Like we've seen recently during this whole pandemic and everything, there's a lot of people getting exposed for saying homophobic things on the internet, and they're Black people too. So I think I just try not to follow those type of people, and if it comes out, I unfollow, and I just try to dismiss everything. And sometimes I educate, sometimes I.
Melody, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh yeah. I just wanted to say like it's really hard to do that, like especially because most of the time it is friends and family that do stuff like that. But for me, before I got into like organizing, before I really like stepped up to my power, I would just shut down because it's really hard to combat when your entire identity is seen as a joke, and how easily it's seen as a joke. Because like even with Ted, like most people would have found that funny, and like even now, like people say, "Oh, it was just a joke." Like when celebrities would do really, really racist or homophobic stuff, like it was just a joke. Like it was a part of the time, even though it really wasn't, because it wasn't funny to us then, and it's not funny now. But it's now coming to light because the society is more accepted of everything, which isn't true. But it's like things like that. I try to call it out when I see it, but even then, it's like there is so much that like sometimes I will go back to like shutting down, but then I'll have to tell myself no. Like you have to stand firm in your ground. But like Jamola said, I don't owe anyone anything. Like if it's to the point where you're just blatantly just trying to be ignorant, then it's like but so much you can do. Like I can give you the information, but I can't force, I can't force that into your head if you don't want to hear it, especially when there are tools available to you, especially during this time on social media that tells you what's right and what's wrong. You just choose to ignore it. So it's just like you have like, yeah, be firm in your ground, but also don't sacrifice your own mental health trying to educate people who don't want to be educated. Because you have to really, like I've learned, especially now during this time, you really have to see the line where people choose to be ignorant versus people who just don't know. They're wrong too, but like, at least they can try to learn. But, versus someone who's just like, oh, I'm just going to be ignorant, even though I see the facts. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Mia, we lost you for a second, but our question was, what do you do to cultivate a safe media space for yourself, considering knowing how much of a role media and all its forms plays in the perpetuation of anti-blackness and anti-queerness?
First of all, I'm sorry. My computer's being very, very stupid. So I've been just like in and out. I'm trying to be as present as possible, y'all. So please give me grace. I appreciate y'all giving me grace. For me, first of all, I'm not on social media. Like, I made a decision, like, I think the day after the news broke about George Floyd, I did like a whole rant on social media, and I was like, fucking him out. I'm not doing this. And I'm still not on social media because it's just not, like, it ruined my mental health, especially this summer. And I was just like, my mental health and my sanity is just worth more than this. Now, with things like being virtual and stuff, I do try to consume only media that uplifts my image and makes me feel good. So I'm at a point now where I just don't concern myself with, or at least I make a concerted effort to not concern myself with things that don't pertain to people, with things that pertain to people who are not Black femmes. I only consume content or like concern myself with things that concern Black femmes, with things that represent Black femmes, because that's really all I give a fuck about at this point, right? And for me, it's like, even in the real world, I guess because of my situation being on campus and being virtual, I haven't had to deal with people who are like being extremely like ignorant and stuff. And even when it happens, I don't educate because it's not my job. I'm not going to give people a lecture. And that's not everybody's method. And I recognize that, right? But I don't do that anymore. Like I did. It's a waste of my energy. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to invest in people and things that don't invest in me. So I stopped like investing in, say, businesses that aren't Black owned, for example, right? Like I'm not going to uplift anything that doesn't uplift my experience and my personhood. And I make an effort. I've reached it's been hard for me to do so up until this point, but I've come to a place where I have no problem cutting off people that don't nourish me, leaving projects, jobs, whatever that don't nourish me. I don't care if we've known each other for 20 years. I don't care if I've been in this class for 4 semesters, whatever. The moment it stops being fun, it stops being great for me, I'm out. That's it. And if you have ignorant stuff to say, I'm not going to, like, I really won't educate. Like, I'll be like, all right. And like I said, like, I think that's just a part of the stage of apathy that I've reached about everything, because that's just my, like, I guess it's my coping mechanism, you could call it, because I deal with a lot of stuff, which is, like, incredibly problematic, but, like, it's whatever. But it's not my job as a Black woman to educate anybody, and it's not my job to pour into anybody that doesn't pour into me. It's not my job to deal with people or things that don't nourish me. And it's not my job to set myself on fire to warm other people and deal with people that wouldn't even spit on me if I was on fire, because they wouldn't give me that grace. And in that sense, I've had to learn to be more selfish, and I've had to learn to be more stringent about my boundaries and my standards. And I have had to learn to speak up and, say no when needed, say yes when needed, to say, this is too much for me, I'm not doing it. I've had to listen to the ancestors when they say, you need to not take that class or we're going to beat you because you should not be doing this. Or like your gut feeling telling you that this person is not good for you. Or it's the ancestors giving you signs being like, you need to cut this person off stat because like fuck shit's going to happen if you don't. Or whatever that might look like, right? So, like I said, like that's probably just me. I recognize that not everybody is at that place as well, but I'm at a place where it's just like my boundaries and my standards and my needs and wants come first for everybody else. And if people have a problem with that, that's on them. That's not my problem to make other people feel good. Me feeling good comes first.
Thank you for that. And that's a sentiment that both queer folks and Black folks both have to learn. And so that brings me to the point of the bridge, right? I know you said, and we're speaking to the fact that we just need to make space for Black and Brown joy in a way that that we never have before. And so with our last 15 minutes, I want to focus our conversation on something that you've spoken a lot about, Mia, and anyone who knows me in real life, I speak on a lot, and that's the transphobia that we see in our community, the femphobia that we see in our community, and the apathy, to borrow your word, one of my favorite words though, but the apathy of cis het folks, both queer and straight, for femme Black men and the trans identity and Black, lesbian, and bisexual women. We see this apathy displayed the most in the murders of trans and femme Black women who that go unanswered, uninvestigated, and unsolved. And then I want to know what you folks think would really be able to make it makes sense for white folks and our queer community to get on the roll when it comes to supporting Black trans women. As we'll say, once Black trans women are free, all the rest of us will be free. But what do you think it is going to take for white folks to just care about the lived experience, white queer folks? We're not asking for folks outside of our queer community right now to care about us. But what is it going to take in the queer community for folks to care about the lives of Black trans women? Melody, I would love to call you Melody.
I think one of the things that could really help is to see everyone's humanity, that we're all the same through education. Because what I've learned through my education personally is that we're all taught that, you know, someone has to be better than you, or like, especially if, like, for me, I'm black and I'm queer. So what my education, what society has taught me is that white men are better than me, you know, which isn't true. But like, that's what society has told me, and it's what society is telling everybody else. So, and because of that, white men, but no matter if you're gay or straight, you're taught that you're better, and that meaning that you're more human than someone who's Black and trans. So it's like, once in the community, once we all see each other with at our full humanity, because we're all people, we all deserve rights. It's not something that, you know, we should have to fight for. It's something that should be given, you know. And it's like, once people start to see that, and then see how the system is denying people their humanity, that's when, at the end of the day, that's when really change is going to really start to come. Because now change isn't really coming as it should be, you know. It's still like, yeah, there was marriage equality, but then trans people are still being murdered. But then, like, oh, but we got marriage equality, so we have a good community here. It's like, you really have to see beyond the symbolic victories, and really see what's really going on in the system, and really see that, yeah, the humanity is coming, like, people's humanities are being put into question, and then seeing how you are, you know, adapting to that system when you shouldn't be, and then fixing that within yourself, you know. But even then, like, that work has to be done. Even though we could give the tools, that work has to be done within themselves. Like, you can do but so much, but if you aren't really willing to put in the work, then changes are going to come. You know, I can't change a white person's mind about their own racism. I can give them tools, but they're going to have to really understand that what they're doing is wrong when you put someone's humanity into question. So yeah, that's the only way, like, change is really going to happen in the community.
Jimmy,
Can I just add?
who's going to? Yeah, I want to hear from all three of y'all, please.
Actually, I'm gonna let Jamila go first.
Yeah, I would just have to agree with Melody. I think that even it's very apparent that even in the queer community that there's transphobia very rampant. Like it's real. Like it's very real, it's very apparent, and it's very out there. So I think that for white queer people, like Melody was saying, we can give them the tools, but they're gonna have to want it. They're gonna have to want to learn, and they're gonna have to want to have equality within our whole community. There's not just white gay people, you know, there's not just white queer people. There are brown and black queer people who will need to be seen as themselves without having to be killed, right? Because we see the videos of them getting abused and we see the videos of them getting murdered, and we shouldn't have to see it for them to be human beings. And I think that everyone keeps posting videos of black people, black queer people dying, and we shouldn't have to see it. They shouldn't have to see it to feel some type of sympathy. They shouldn't have to feel it. They shouldn't have to see it to care and to feel. So I think that should be one thing that we get rid of. Like, there should be no posting of black and brown bodies, queer bodies, especially everyone dead. We shouldn't have to see it for their humanity to be given to them. It should already be given before we even see the videos go viral or whatever. So I think that we all need to stop sharing as a collective. We all need to stop sharing these videos, and they have to want to learn, right? Just like there's a saying, right? You can't bring the horse to the water. You can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, or something like that. Like, we can help them, but they have to want to learn, and they have to want to see the whole LGBTQ plus community, because there's not only a couple letters, there's a multitude of letters. So I think that everyone should be included, and everyone within the community who has privilege needs to see that they are privileged, even if they are queer. Because I hear a lot of white queer people are like, I'm queer too, so I actually do understand what you're talking about. And it's not, and they have to get it. They're not understanding, but they have to get it. And I think that now, if they haven't understood it, and if they're not getting it, if it's not going through their heads, then they're lost causes at this point. Because you can't keep trying to fight them if they're very firmly, deeply rooted in their nasty beliefs. So,
to seek transformation, no one's a lost cause, but they got a lot of work to do, and we could give them the books, but they gotta go over there and do it, and then when they're ready, they could come back to the table. Mia, darling, what do you, and I know we don't have to do the labor for these white folks. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, what do you think? Mia, you still with us? You're kind of frozen. Can you hear me? I think it's very apropos that Mia got frozen on the apathy face when she was like, when they was like, but anyways, I think we have oh yay, there you go, yay!
I'm so sorry, it kept crashing.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to hear my answer, but like,
yes,
we can go like with the closeout.
No, we
okay.
Do. Make it real quick, and then we gotta close.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna be quick. Okay. So first, like, if we're talking about trans identities, we all have to recognize that everyone on this panel is cis. First of all, there's no trans people on these panels. We need more of a platform. Second off, we need to stop doing this thing where we're like going to them to ask for education on trans issues. We have Google, we have Siri, we have all these things. We need to learn. We need to come with the knowledge and then bring it to them. And it should not be like, hey, or like, for me, like, I love like my mother, Jeremy. Like, I'm not gonna go to her and be like, yo, what's like being trans? I'm not gonna go to Erica. I'm not gonna go to them and be like, yo, what's it? And I'm shouting them out because I love them. Shout out to them. They're bad bitches. But like, I'm not gonna go to them and be like, hey, what's it like being trans? What's the trans experience like? Like, no. I mean, we can do that, like, for empathy and all that kind of stuff, but you should be doing your own education on, like, the trans issues. Like, it goes deeper than just the average lifespan is 35, like, for trans folks. We know that. How are we going to get that lifespan up higher? We are diagnosing problems and we're not figuring out solutions. Like, listen, that's all fine and dandy, but like, where do we go now? What are we doing now? You know what I mean? And I can't stress this enough because I've been learning about this too, but radical empathy. You gotta take yourself out of the equation. It's not, especially, and honestly, there's an accountability piece with it too, because it's like, as cis people in this panel, we all have privilege over trans people. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to make space for trans folks? What are we doing to make sure our trans siblings have what they need? What are we doing to dismantle transphobia in whatever community we're in? Because it's also our responsibility, and mine too. And if we're not doing enough, call yourself out on that, or hold yourself accountable. Do better. We all need to be better, right? And especially for like white, if we're talking about like white queer folks, like especially if you're watching, like, it's not about you. It was never about you. It's never been about you. It's never going to be about you, okay? And if that hurts your feelings, I'm not sorry about it, but like, you're gonna have to sit with that. Like, it's not about you, okay? You got to practice radical empathy. You got to take your, like, you got to, when we say decenter whiteness, we mean decenter you. Decenter you and your cultural appropriating ass, singing Nicki Minaj lyrics and won't stand out for black women ass, all this good stuff that you, no, like, listen, because you want to do that, cool, but you need, like, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, like, you're not showing up for us, especially not our trans siblings. But you're going to appropriate a lot of our slang and culture that came from black and brown, cis and trans, queer and trans folks. I'm sorry. I'm like, because it's not about you. Like, if you get nothing else, like, it never was about you. Like, you need to decenter yourself and take yourself out of the equation, because you were never in the equation. You were never in this. Like, everything that you were taught about you being superior is false. It's lies. Okay? So if you're really about liberation, you need to be able to take your privilege and give it to us and use it to liberate, especially, I can't stress this enough, for our black, especially our black trans femmes, our black trans siblings. Like, you should be giving your money and your resources to them. Skip us. Go to us second, go to them first. They should have it first and foremost for everybody. All the trans people in your life should not be struggling. They should be living well. They should not be struggling at any point in time. You have to have radical empathy. It goes like Melody was saying, like, you have to see their humanity, but you have to see us, queer and trans, right, as people, especially trans people. And you have to center trans folks in their work, in the work that you do, whatever that looks like. And honestly, that's for everybody who's not trans. You should be doing this work. And honestly, we as cis folks are not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. And we have to stand in that as well. And it's a hard truth. It really is. But we're not. And we need to be all collectively doing better. And we need to hold each other accountable. And we need to be okay with trans folks holding us accountable, because at the end of the day, they know what they want and what they need better than we do. So we have to listen to them, and we have to follow their example, especially black trans femmes. Period.
Yes. I would say a very important fact to note is that even though for the entirety of 2020 we have been living in a pandemic, this far in 2020, actually in April of 2020, we had already reached more murders of Black trans folks than we had in all of 2019. And so we know that a lot of this is coupled with the current government regime we are in. We know, however, that the impunity that folks are experiencing and the murdering and non-investigations of the murders of Black trans folks, both trans men and trans women, is due to historical foundations of America. And just like each and every person on this panel has said, we are all cis. Yes, we are Black cis beings, but we are all cis beings. And so that's why you folks will hear me speak of what are we doing for trans folks the most? What am I doing to funnel in and make sure that every trans person I know receives work opportunities? and stipends and gifts. And when people are like, oh, Allah, we're going to send you money, best believe I send money on in my community because I have a point of privilege. I know that people feel safer working with me and my queer, Black, cis woman self than they do working with a femme Black man or a trans Black woman or a trans Black man. And we have to talk about the erasure of the trans identity and understand and know that this world we will never get liberation until Black and brown trans men and women are seeking liberation. Not only are we seeking—
And don't forget the non-binary folks.
Yes, thank you. And the abolishment and seeking of abolishing prison systems, part of the goal and part of the path towards the abolition of the prison industrial complex is the creation of spaces that would heal and begin to allow trans, Black, and brown women to heal around the violence that they see and experience daily due to cis heteronormative foundations. And so when we're talking about what is it going to take, how does the queer community reach racial equity, we've gotten plenty of solutions. We've gotten tools. We've gotten all kinds of amazing things from these experts on this panel. But I will say, read. This is a book that most folks I know are reading right now. This is important to ground ourselves, especially Black and brown folks, grounding ourselves in our pre-Reconstruction amazingness of the Black queer and trans experience. This is another book, Captive Genders. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Pride Center for this amazing panel. Our time is done, but lo and behold, we have so many more things for you folks to tap into for the rest of Pride Month. And thank you, tech team. Check out everything else that's going on today. Check out everything that's happening for the rest of the week for Pride Week. Stay tuned. We have some amazing panels happening on Friday. We have a really, really, really great program lineup for September and, of course, beyond. So again, what is the answer to our question today? Get in community, build with your community, heal with your community, and learn with your community. Thank you so much. You have a great night. Don't forget to use your hand sanitizer, wear your mask, and wash your hands. Yes, join us tonight, celebrating queer Black artists, 8 p.m. You got a half an hour. Go get your snacks, get some dinner, and join us back here on Twitch. Thank you.